Hey youth fam, it's Brandon, youth pastor for Simple Church. And today I get the opportunity of closing out our series, Squad Up. And let me start by asking you something. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to just drop something versus how much more work it is to pick it up? I think of that classic scene from Home Alone when Kevin is walking home with a bag full of groceries and everything just drops. Right? Or how about how walking upstairs or up a hill is always so much more difficult than walking down? Well, that's gravity for you. And as I say that, you're probably like, duh, I know about gravity, Brandon. I went to kindergarten. But gravity is so much more than the force that keeps our feet to the ground or causes things to fall out of our bags. Gravity is a force of attraction that exists between any two masses. And here's the crazy part. The power of something's gravitational pull is dependent on the size of its mass. Basically, the reason you and I's feet stay stuck to the ground is because the earth has a much greater mass than you or I do. And here's why that is so important for you and I as we finish out this series. Our friendships have gravity. Each of us is being pulled or drawn in a specific direction in our lives. And that direction has a lot to do with the friend groups who have the most gravity in your life. A.W. Tozer would put it this way: you are the company that you keep. Or I've also heard it said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Basically, the people you surround yourself with are shaping your future. So the question I would encourage you to ask is, who has the most gravity in your life? And as you consider that question, I'd like you to consider the words of Solomon written to us in Proverbs 13:20, where he says, the one who walks with the wise will become wise, but a companion of fools will suffer harm. This is good news, right? Solomon is saying if we lack wisdom, all we got to do is get around people who are wise. We give those who are wise gravity in our life, and we will become wise. But don't miss what the second part says. It says a friend of fools will suffer harm. Have you ever considered the reason why you're always hurt is because all your friends are fools? I know. That's mean, right? But think about it. This makes sense. If the people who have the bigger mass in your life, if the ones who have the most gravity in your life are foolish, you are going to gravitate toward, you are going to be drawn to foolishness. Paul talks about this as well in his letter to the Corinthians. He says, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Because here's the deal. Many of you may feel like you can't finish a lot of the time. Maybe you feel like you do all the right things, yet it still doesn't seem to go well for you. And Paul would tell you, don't be misled trying to come up with an excuse. Maybe it's this or maybe it's that. What it really comes down to is bad company. Listen to me. If that's you, it's not because you aren't gifted or God hasn't called you. It's because you lack good character. And the only way you're going to get rid of bad character is to get rid of bad company. I can think back to when this has played out the biggest for me in my own life. At the beginning of my college year, when I started to date this girl, Monica. She was cute, she was spontaneous, she was fun, but she was also an atheist and didn't share a lot of the same morals or beliefs that I had. And my two best friends in my life at the time encouraged me to date her because, YOLO. But my youth pastor told me something I'll never forget. He said that it is much easier to be pulled down in your faith than it is to pull others up. But I decided to give gravity to my two friends and their advice as well as to Monica over my youth pastor and my youth fam. And sure enough, it drew me into foolishness. It ruined my relationship with my parents that year. It ruined relationships with friends. It hurt my grades and it weakened my faith. And I look back now and would tell you that season of my life is the one I regret the most. And maybe you can relate with a situation like this. Like you have a moment in your life that you look back on and you go, what was I thinking? And now you regret it and you'll probably never forget it. But here is why these moments in our lives have so much power and why this idea that Solomon and Paul are sharing with us shows up all over Scripture. The real battle we face isn't a physical one, but a spiritual one. And this is what Paul talks about as he ends his letter to the Ephesians. He says, a final word. Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against all strategies of the devil. For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. The final words of Paul, his last piece of advice to the Ephesians, is to remind them that they are facing a spiritual battle. And then he goes on to tell the Ephesians to put on the armor of God. You may be familiar with these. Maybe you've heard them: the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shoes of peace, or AKA the good news shoes, the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit. But what's interesting about this set of armor is there's no mention of anything to protect our backs. Probably because during Paul's time, you didn't do battle alone. And so instead he ends with this. He says, pray in the Spirit at all times and on every occasion. Stay alert and persistent in your prayers for all believers everywhere. And pray for me too. Ask God to give me the right words so I can boldly explain God's mysterious plan that the good news is for Jews and Gentiles alike. I'm in chains now, still preaching this message as God's ambassador. So pray I'll keep on speaking boldly for him as I should. As Paul asks for the prayers from his squad, it reminds me of these past couple months where I'm sure, like many of you, I've had very real battles and struggles and tough decisions. And one in particular pushed me to a lot of prayer and a lot of emotions. But while I was facing this, I was able to go to a godly friend and ask him about it. And the wisdom he gave me offered me direction and peace. And so what I've noticed as I reflect on these types of stories in my life, and as I have had the privilege of pastoring teenagers for the past 10 years, is we more often than not gravitate towards those who enable our desires and who sympathize with our struggles. We tend to let our friend groups choose us rather than being the ones who choose our friend groups. But what I've also realized, and I wonder if you can relate, I don't want friends who enable me. I want friends who empower me. I don't want friends who give me their sympathy. I want friends who offer me their strength. What I've realized is that when we have the right people around us, we stand strong together. In Ecclesiastes 4:12, we are told a person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. And so if you would like to stand strong, if you would like to be empowered instead of enabled, if you would like strength instead of sympathy, if you would like good character instead of bad character, it's going to take intentionality. It's going to take choosing your friend groups instead of falling into them. But let me make it real practical for you. If you want strength in your life, you have to follow these 3 S's. You have to separate from bad company. You need to identify who is drawing you toward foolishness and separate yourself from them. Stop giving them the gravity in your life. You have to search for your squad. You have to intentionally decide the type of people you want to have the most gravity in your life and seek them out. You have to spend time with your squad. For the right squad to have gravity in your life, you have to give it to them by making time spent with them a priority in your life. Because here's the deal. The battles in this life are real and powerful. As Paul tells us, there are very real spiritual forces at work, and they have gravity. And the only way to overcome them is if our faith has more mass than our struggles. And so my hope for you this year is that you would be surrounded by faith. I hope your life is filled with it. But to get there, you will need more than just a friend group. Anyone can be your best friend this year. Anyone can take the place of gravity in your life. But I'm here to tell you, you don't just need another friend group. You need a fam. You need a squad. You don't need another BFF. You need an FFF, a faith-filled friend. Someone who can see when you're lacking strength and say, here, have some of mine. Or can tell when you are lacking faith and say, I got a song for you. I've got a good word to lift you up. Because when the right people have the gravity in your life, they will pull you in the direction God intends for you and will pull you up when you fall away from it. When we have the right squad, we can stand strong together.